In this video, I'm going to talk about choosing the best app category for your app or game. And if you're not familiar with app categories for iOS or Android, I'll show you right now what that looks like. This is the Google Play Store, and there's the list of categories here. So this is the full list. You can see from books and reference all the way down to widgets. And under games is a very large category. So they've broken it down into several subcategories as well. So that's for Google Play and Android. And for iOS, on the right here, under iPhone, it says all categories. And if I drop this down, you can see there's several categories here as well. And just like Android, if I go to games, and I scroll down to the bottom here, it says more games on the right-hand side. And just like the Google Play Store, iOS also breaks their games into subcategories as well, because this is the biggest category for any mobile device platform. Games is huge. So these are the subcategories that games are broken down into. So now the question is, what's the best app category for your app? Now, most apps generally will go into its most appropriate category. So if your app is a productivity app, it would probably go into productivity or business. If it's a photo-taking app, it'll probably go into photo and video. If it's a game, it'll go into game, and usually the most appropriate subcategory of a game. So if it's like a puzzle game, it would go into the puzzle subcategory, and so on and so forth. And so that would make logical sense. But the question there is that the best strategy for your app? And just as a side note here, the category that you choose will be included as a keyword for your search ranking. So like I said, if you have a photo app and it goes under photo and video, then you'll have photography or whatever that category name included as one of your keywords that will be included when people do a search for your app. And so the same would go if you put it under productivity and someone searches for, like for example, the signature app that I was demoing earlier. If someone's searching for signature productivity and I put it under the productivity category, then that keyword productivity will also be included under my keywords. And I don't need to add that into my title. I don't necessarily have to add it into my title or my keywords because at least for Apple, and I believe Android is the same way, whatever category you choose will be included as a keyword for your search ranking. So I'll go back to what I was questioning earlier, is choosing the most appropriate category the best strategy for you? And I can't fully answer that for you, and it is kind of like a business decision that you need to make for yourself. So it's not necessarily the best strategy to put it in the most appropriate category. I would suggest you consider a less competitive category for more visibility. So if you have a category that your app is going into is very, very competitive, and if you've done a search and there's just like many players that are competing in that category for the same function that your app does, it may be strategic to look at a less competitive category for more visibility. So again, if you have a photo app and you find that a lot of the photo apps, there's huge supply for photo apps in the photography category, you may want to consider a different category to put your app into so that it can get ranked higher sooner and become more visible on the app charts, which would help generate more downloads. And so that's something that you need to consider and you need to look into. And it may require some trial and error. So you may put it into the photography category and you find out it's not getting very much traction that way. So another strategy would be to publish your app under another category where it may be less competitive, giving you more visibility in the App Store. So in the case of a photo app, instead of publishing it into the photography category, you may want to put it under entertainment or productivity, or a number of other categories. And the App Store doesn't necessarily check on whether your app is in the right category or not, or the most relevant category or not. So I've seen games that are under casino or dice, because they're, at least the dice category is much less competitive. And I've seen people publish, racing games in the dice category. And so I don't believe Apple really does a lot of checking for what category you publish to. And so that is something you may want to look into, just so that you can show up on the chart, potentially show up on some of the top charts, and increase your visibility. So one thing to keep in mind is, if you do plan to publish your app in a less competitive category, it also most likely means that there's less traffic in that category. So it is something you have to weigh the pros and cons to when you're deciding whether you want to publish it in a certain category or not. Because less competitive categories generally mean less traffic. So in the end, you have to decide. In this chart, I want to show you the iOS App Store app distribution by category. And so this will help you get a sense of how busy, how much traffic each category is getting, how many apps have been published into that category, and it also generally means how competitive every category is. So you can see right at the top here, games is the largest category, and I had alluded to this earlier, but it is the largest category, or at least it has the most number of apps in it at about 19% of the entire App Store. And then it goes down, education, business, it goes down to being the most busy category, down to the least busy category, which is catalogs and weather. And then there's a little bit that's unknown. But this data is as of July 2014. And so the whole purpose of showing you this is just to give you a sense of how competitive categories are. So if you had an app and you were trying to decide between publishing it in the business category or in the utilities category, and you were just trying to decide between the two, you can just see from here that business has a lot more apps in it than utilities. Business is at 8.4% and utilities is at 5.34%. And so you'd have to make a business decision between those two categories. You may want to try business first, but if you find it's too competitive, you may want to republish your app under the utilities category and see how it does there. And I mean, you can go down and you could probably still try some other ones, like maybe in finance or even in catalogs. I'm not sure how that what's in that category, but like I mentioned before, I've seen some games that are in subcategories that have nothing to do with what the game is about, and yet they're still in there and Apple has allowed it. So it's something that's worth trying and playing around with, just to see what kind of traction you get in which category. Now here's a chart that's also the games subcategories. So this is games broken down into subcategories, showing you which one's the busiest, which one has the most apps, down to which one has the least apps. And again, this is for iOS apps. The other slide was also for iOS apps, but the Android Google Play Store will be very, very similar to this. So you can use this as a reference for both stores. They should be fairly similar in terms of how competitive and how busy each category is. So again, this is the list of subcategories for games. Puzzle games is actually the busiest and has the most apps in that subcategory, and then it goes down to action, arcade, and it keeps going down. So take a look at that. And again, I've seen people publish racing games in the dice category. just because it is less competitive, and Apple has allowed it. So it's something worth trying, definitely worthwhile playing around with to see whether you can get into the top charts in a different category. Or you might find that it's most beneficial just to publish your app or game into the most logical and most appropriate category, because your target audience may be browsing that category and find your app. Ultimately, you have to make that business decision, and you have to decide and try it out and test it and see what works best for you.